Looking at buffs and nerfs, 120 gods, and I've got some pretty strong opinions on some of these gods. This could get interesting. Could get bad, it could get interesting, I don't know. So as you can see, we've got a buff tier. Pretty straightforward. The god needs to be buffed. No change, meaning the god's fine where they're at right now. Nerf, meaning they're a little strong where they're at, or they're too strong where they're at, they're OP, whatever. Rework. Rework for me is either their kit is so outdated compared to everyone else that it's just time to do something, just rework it, or they've just been super bad for so long it's time to rework it. So we'll get into it. I think Achilles is fine where he is in current meta. I think that's super straightforward. If you watch the tier list, then you know. I think Agni is good, even though I think I have Agni in like S tier or A plus tier. Agni's up there. AMC. I think AMC could get a rework of some kind. Maybe not a full rework, but a partial rework. I just feel like even when ability hunters are good, he can't play ability well, and his kit almost makes him an AA hunter, but he's never good in AA metas. So I think AMC should get some kind of a rework. The only time he's been good is when they added crazy pen to his ultimate, and people were just running him to ult bot and kill people off of the ult pen, and then that even fell off. So I'd be down for a one change. I'd be down for, honestly, I think everything but his ult. I think they can change his 1, 2, or his 3, or all 3 together, and he'd be in a good spot with whatever they did, or a better spot. I like his ult. I think his ult could stay. It kind of fits with the way the god is too. I think Ao Kuang is fine. He comes in and out very slightly into the meta. He'll be all right. AMC. Amma is fine. On her is fine. There's gonna be a lot that really don't need changes, as it should be. Anubis. I think Anubis could get a slight rework. Maybe I should make it tier for slight rework, but I'll just leave this because partial, slight, whatever. I think high risk can make it work. I just don't think Anubis will ever be good with the way his ult is. It farms idiots and gets farmed by non-idiots. And I truly believe his 1, 2, and his 3 are perfectly fine. I think his ult is trash. If they made it so his ult, he can move around like his 1, that might be enough. Or if they made it so he could like have some mobility in his kit, then I think a standstill ult would end up being fine, so he could reposition first. Ao Kuang. I think Ao Kuang probably needs a nerf right now. For some reason, the Reddit thinks Ao Kuang's not good. I have no idea why, but he's good in the solo and jungle at all levels. Very, very good, and pretty much impossible to play around in a rank setting where people aren't playing as a team. Aphrodite. I think Aphrodite needs a rework. They buffed her 1 and it made her OP. They nerfed her 1 and she's back to being pretty much like not relevant. I wouldn't say she's the worst god in the game, but she could use a rework. I think Apollo can get a buff as long as it doesn't make his global ult better. A laning phase ult or buff will be fine. I think Arachne needs a buff, or at the very tiniest thing, they have to change it so the spiders actually work in the jungle again. Because currently the way minions work, or like player-made minions work on jungle camps, is trash. It doesn't work. So I'm down for Arachne buff. I think Ares is fine. Artemis is a weird one. I've wanted Artemis to get a slight rework for a long time. I had an idea with the 1, which I guess could also just be a buff, but a rework, you could argue it. I think the 1 needs to be changed or made way better, where it's not just a combo off of like a hard CC in front of you or off of your ult. It's something that gets used regularly, where if you walk near it, it slows or something, and then if you walk right in the middle of it, it traps. Or something. They have to do something for art to keep up with, like, if you compare Art's kit to Martichoras, it's not even close. It's not even the same area code. So I think a slight rework or 1 ability rework would be fine. Artio can get a buff right now, even though I really don't want it. I think Athena's fine. I think Atlas is fine. I think Awilix is fine. I think Baba Yaga, people probably say she needs a nerf, but I don't think so. I think she's fine. Bacchus is fine. Baka is fine. Baron is fine. Bastet, honestly, is probably going to need a nerf, but I'm not going to throw her in that category yet because most people don't even realize how good she is still. I feel like I found, like, we've seen that one a little earlier here. Bellona needs a buff. Auto attack warriors have not been meta because the items aren't making them meta. That's as simple as it gets. Bracken, I think he's fine. Kama is fine, even though I don't think Kama is very good. Serb, fine. Cern, fine. There's going to be a lot in this fine bracket. All right. I believe this is gonna hurt every Chaac fanboy's soul. I think Chaac's whole kit needs to change. I think he needs a full-blown rework. He needs to be reworked into a whole new god with all new abilities. I don't think there's any making him relevant. In Conquest, he'll be meta for like a week, and then he's trash again after every buff. So just new kit all around the board. All passive, 4 abilities, everything for Chaac rework. Chunga's fine. Charon, I actually think he's fine. He'll probably end up getting some kind of a nerf, but I think he's fine. Charybdis is okay. Chernobog's okay. Chiron's all right. A lot of these gods vary very drastically off of items. Like Chiron, if ability unders are meta, he's good. And then you probably want him nerfed or something. Kronos is good. Cleo's fine. Cthulhu, I think Cthulhu sucks, dude. My problem with Cthulhu is I don't know if a buff is what I want. Because I think his kit is stupid. When he's OP, it's because nobody can kill him. That's the only reason he's OP. It's not because his abilities are good, because he's a giant target. So I almost think a rework. I think I'm more in rework area for Cthulhu. Cullen is all right. Borderline nerf, but I think it's item, so I wouldn't nerf the god. Cupid needs a buff, for sure. I think they buff the one. They make the one more useful in some way, shape, or form. They can keep it the same way it is, just make it way more useful. Dodgy needs a change, but it's not a buff or a nerf or a rework. They need to fix the way her auto attack canceling works because she's super bugged right now. Danza, I think, is fine. Disco's fine. Erlong Shen. In current state, I almost think Erlong Shen's fine. Straight buffing him isn't worth. Maybe a rework. A rework for Erlong Shen or turn him into an assassin with a rework would be pretty solid. And give them Lance. Swap Lance and Erlong Shen. Make him an assassin. Make Lance into a warrior. Eset is fine. Fafnir's fine. Fenrir's fine. Freya's coming up, but she's all right for now. Ganesh is good. Geb kind of pumping lately. He's got a really high win rate, but he's fine. Gilgamesh, does he need a buff, dude? I feel like Gilgamesh is kind of trash right now, so I'll give him the courtesy of giving him some kind of a buff. The problem is warriors are so simple that when you buff them, they just become overpowered because everybody can play them. Guan Yu, I think, is fine. I don't think Guan needs a buff. Hachi's all right. Hades is okay. Hebo's okay. People like to say Hebo needs a nerf, but he does not. He's so easy to play around as long as you know how to pick all the right gods. Heimdall is all right. Hell is all right. Hera. I think Hera and you rework her ult. I don't like Hera's ult at all. I think you rework Hera's ult. You probably also rework her 3 because it all makes no sense to be giving her the shield bubble as an ability that buffs the ult in that case. I think you give her a new passive, give her a new ult, unless you can make the new passive or the old passive work with the new ult, and you change her 3. I don't know the last time Hera was hard meta or if she's ever been the #1 god. You know what I mean? Like, never been like the top mage ever. Hercules, I think he's all right where he is. Horus, I think, needs a nerf. Horus is busted, especially in a meta where pen shred is valued. Ho Yi needs a buff so he can clear the wave. Hun Bats, honestly, Hun Bats needs a buff. We've been in an assassin, like assassins have been very good for so long, but even when assassins were played in every role, Blue Sun Assassin's OP, Hun Bats has been trash. So I'm down for Hun Bats buff. Ishtar, I think, is okay for now. She's not really that great, but she's all right. I think Echel's okay. I think Izzy's okay because she could so much pressure. I think Janice needs a nerf. Them adding pen shred to the ult, giving it to the full kit, but from the ult leveling was dumb. Jingwei, I think, is fine. She needs to stay dead for a year or 2. Yorm needs a slight nerf in the meta, or at least just a change to the meta. So we'll go nerf / no change. Kali, I think, needs a nerf. The problem is she's so heavily reliant on items that I don't know what you nerf on her. Because I feel like if you nerf the ult dramatically, she's dead. I think she never gets played again. So I don't really know what. They just nerfed her passive and it doesn't change anything. Can't nerf Kins because then you nerf every hunter. The assassins that are AA based, like Baka and Kali, play too much around when hunter auto attack items are meta. Kali for a rework. I don't think you rework her though. She's so old school. Like she's just been around forever. I feel like you just find a way to nerf her. You have to test things. Test things or give her a new 2 that synergizes differently off of the 3, I guess, so she can be played. But I feel like it all comes down to that ult anyway. They'd have to, if you reworked her, you'd probably just have to give her a brand new ult, but how are you going to find out a new ult that works with that kit? I don't know. Khepri's all right. King Arthur's fine. He's getting played a lot more. Kukulkan, I think Kukulkan needs a buff, and I think it needs to be something super simple, like the duration of his 2 is longer, or the cooldown of his 2 is shorter, and then he's OP. I think he'd go from being like average to OP off of a buff to the 2, or the right buff to the 2. Kumbhakarna, I don't want him to be played, but he needs a buff. He's pretty trash. Kuzimbo needs a hard nerf. Hard nerf Kuzimbo. I don't care if he's only been being played for like 2-3 months. He's so unfun to play against. Just nerf him. Please. Lance needs a rework. Lance needs a rework, and it needs to be... I don't know how that just popped up. It needs to either be he swapped to a warrior, and they change his stats, and they leave him with his kit, or they give him an entire new kit and leave him as an assassin. Having thorns as a built-in item, having reflect damage as a built-in stat ability onto a god for Kazumbo is so stupid. Loki's in a fine place. Martichoras has to be killed. Martichoras has to be slaughtered. It makes no sense that from the day he came out to now, despite the 3 little nerfs, we'll call them nerfs, he's still the number 1 or number 2 god in the game and still has the best ult in the game. It makes no sense. There's something going on behind the scenes that they don't want this god to fall off, and I don't know why. His kit compared to other hunters' kit is so bloated, it's not even funny. Everything about his kit is busted. His passive is busted. The movement speed out of his 3 is busted. His 3 working for teammates is busted. His ult is the best ult, if not one of the best abilities in the game. And then his damage combo from his 1-2 is over the top. And on top of that, he can clear from his tower line if he ever needed to. So even if he was having a bad game or got ganked on cooldown, he can literally just center his tower and press 1 and it was full clear. He has to be nerfed all across the board. Maui's in a fine state after his nerfs. Medusa needs a buff. The way you change these gods that are underperforming that have weird dashes is you make the dash not only be an aggro dash. There has to be a way that the dash works defensively. Like any god like that could get the Wukong type mechanic where on Wukong's 3 you can go into knockup form, damage form, stun form, or bird form to run away. They give it a 2-former, but it's not a form. It's just like dash close and it knocks them away. Dash full range and it's damage, right? Like it's such a simple thing. I always wanted that on Mercury when Mercury was bad for like 4 years. I was like, just change his 3 so if he overcommits he can get out. Like if you commit into an ult on a Mercury, you get out. He doesn't need it now. I think Mercury's fine where he is right now because he's only slightly considered bad because of Spectral. I think Merlin is fine. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's great at all. I think he's in a good spot. Morgan Le Fay, I think, is fine. Mulan could probably get a slight buff. Question is, which thing do they hit? Because I feel like his 1 and 2 are OP early and then fall off slightly late game. So maybe they find a way for them to scale better. But you don't want to give them to like scaling because they aren't going to build power on Mulan. So what do you buff? I don't know. The high res is a job to figure that out. Naja, I think, is in a fine spot. Neith probably needs a buff, but she is super dumb when she's meta because she becomes a heavy ult bot, and ult bots in games are not fun. Nemesis, I borderline think Nem is okay because I think Nem's just bad because the item is not really fitting to her, but at the same time her ult has been gutted so much, so maybe a buff to Nem's 2 or 1. Honestly, Nem's 1 could probably get a buff. I don't know if it's ever gotten a real valuable buff outside of like 10 damage to each dash. Nike has one of the highest win rates in the game. I think she's all right. I would not say she needs a nerf. Nox is fine. I actually think Nox support is fine, but Nox isn't meant to be a support. It's meant to be a mage. I think you rework Nox. I think we rework Nox finally, to be honest. It's dumb to play a god that has to hit 2 abilities. It's stupid. It makes no sense that you have to make one of your abilities useful. You have to hit another one. I think it's stupid. So the rework wouldn't have to be a full rework. It can be considered a buff. They can make it so the 2 can be used, but it doesn't do full damage or something like that. You know what I mean? Like if you miss the 1, you can just pop the 2 real quick and do like 30% damage or half damage or something. They need something to make it more, yeah, like Silic. They need something to change that up. It's trash. Nuwa, I think Nuwa needs a buff. I don't want her to be buffed, but she probably needs a buff. She's one of the worst mages in the game. Her ultimate is at the point where it's pretty trash. The best way to buff her would because her 2-3 combo is solid, but it's another thing where you need two abilities together, which I think is stupid, but I think it's okay on Nuwa. She lacks mobility, where her 1 is her mobility, which is a little weird. So they can remove the whole fog aspect of her 1 because it's kind of trash and give her a movement ability. It would be crazy, but they can do it. They can make her a stealth mage or something. Like she dashes short, but she stays stealth while she walks around for a second or two. Or there's a fog around her and that does the AoE day. They can do something to her 1 to make her better, or just make her all be better at killing squishy targets and not just hitting the heavy tanks with the main ability, with her main items. Nuwa, I don't know. Nuwa's a weird god to kind of try to tweak, I think. Odin needs a buff. They've made his ultimate trash. Like, even when Odin's ultimate couldn't die, he was still bad for years. So I don't know why his ult dies. I never understood why they changed that. I think you bring it back where Odin's ult can't be killed, and they have to go actives and stuff around it. Odin's pretty bad right now. I think Oleron's all right. Very heavily influenced by items. Osiris probably needs a buff, just like Bologna, same reason. AA warriors are kind of bad right now. Pele's good. Persephone's a free rework, full rework. Persephone's whole kit needs to change. When she came out and had the most OP passive in the history of video games, we knew there was a problem, but I didn't think they would make the god worse after a rework. They need a full rework. Like kill her. Oh, I put her on her nerf, my bad. Kill every idea that she currently has out of all of her abilities and give her all new abilities. Everything brand new. Passive brand new. Everything brand new. Poseidon's fine. Ra's fine. Raijin needs a buff. They buff him, tweak him a little numbers wise. They think he's going to come back in the meta. Buff his utility in some way, shape, or form, where like his 3 doesn't have a delay anymore, or his ultimate doesn't make you stand still for 45 minutes. The range on his 1 or something. The travel time on the 2-1 combos. Something utility wise into his kit rather than just damage numbers buff, please. Rama's fine. Rad is fine. We know Rav needs a nerf, but they said they're going to revert his tankiness. So I think once they revert his tankiness, he goes to no change and he's still good. He needs a nerf as of right this second. Scylla's fine. Serket's fine. Set needs a nerf. He's way too basic to be doing the damage numbers that he does. Shiva, it's item based. So I'd say Shiva as a god needs no changes. They gotta nerf those items though. Mana Core Spikes is too OP for Shiva. Shiva wasn't getting touched for a long time, and then the tank items became way more valuable, and he starts getting played again. Scotty. I don't think Scotty needs a rework. I actually don't. I think they buff her, and she's relevant again. I think they did the slight change to her dog that they made, where the regen on the health is fast and all that stuff. I think that's a good change. I think they buff her ult, where it's not just a root kind of bot. They take away the AoE bullcrap and they give it some kind of direct damage. Get rid of the dog. No, the dog is a cool aspect. They just got to do it right. Sobek I think is fine. Soul I think is fine. Wukong is fine. Susano probably needs a slight nerf. More than likely to the damage of his ult would probably be what you'd hit mainly, but nothing too dramatic. He's just a good god that gets through a lot and has a lot of matchups that he does well into. Plus his CC, the pull and the ult on the knockup on his ult is the best CCs in the game. Like knockups are OP. Surtur buff. Surtur sucks. I don't know what they buff because his 1-5 is fine and the rest of his game is terrible. So either buff the late game damage on his stun, buff the late game cooldown on his stun so he can get off multiple in a team fight. Do not buff his passive sustain. Maybe make him tankier in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not his damage. Maybe just make him tankier so he can spam more. I don't know. They have to figure that out. Sylvanas actually I think needs a buff right now. He just doesn't compete. I don't think he's bad, but I think he doesn't compete well with most of the supports. You never see Sylvanas getting played and having good games. His ultimate is dope, but the rest of his kit is super questionable. Laning phase, the 3 is solid, but outside of that, I feel like the 3 never comes into play. I feel like back in the day, when Sylvanas was a top support, there would be these stalemate team fights where if he had a pull, it was like an insta-kill and crazy. That just doesn't happen anymore. Terra, I think Terra's fine. Maybe, no, I think Terra's fine. Thanatos is fine. The Morgan is fine. I think Thor needs a slight nerf, but I don't want Thor to get nerfed. So I think overall the argument is there to be made about a nerf, but when Thor is meta, the game is more fun. over the course of every year, whenever Thor is good, Smite is in a fairly good place. Like, I think Smite's fun right now. I think the problem with Smite is they haven't added any new aspects to the game that are exciting. I think these things they keep adding are kind of trash. He did just get nerfed, but it didn't touch him in the jungle. It really only slightly affected him in solo, and it didn't do much. I'll say no change for now. When he's the #1 jungler over Kali, that's when we're looking for a nerf. Thoth, I think, is fine. Thoth is good. Tiamat's fine. Tsukuyomi sucks. You could put him in buff or rework. I have like an argument for both. Buff his ult, so it's relevant because his ult is ass. His ult is ass. Sorry, his ult is ass. It can be Aegis, and overall, it doesn't do enough damage to kill somebody and then drop you in front of them to make it worthwhile. So I think Tsukuyomi needs either super buff to his ultimate, or they rework his kit overall and probably change his 2 completely. His 2 is stupid. It was such a good ability at first, and it is trash now. I think Tyr is fine, especially with his the buff to his stun on his, or giving him a stun on his ultimate. Ul is item based. He's fine. Vamana needs a buff. They gutted this god, or rework him. He went from being the best god in the game to not being played at all. Like, he does not get touched right now at all. I think Vulcan can get a buff. I don't think Vulcan's bad, but I think people struggle at playing Vulcan, so they buff him. And I think most people don't use his... They either can't land his ult or they don't use his turret correctly. So you either buff the ultimate in some way that makes it easier to land, or you rework the 2 into something much better. Vulcan's broken in what world? In what world is Vulcan broken? When's the last time you had a Vulcan in your game doing anything? Because I've played like 150 ranked games at Masters level plus, and we've had like 2 Vulcan games in the matches. There's no way you're afraid of Vulcan. He gets dove for free. His abilities are very difficult to land while being pressured, and his ultimate is very difficult to land just in general. In what world does Arachne need a buff? Are you trolling? Arachne can't clear for anything and has a terrible team fight. She's always had a horrible team fight. It's crazy to me how you question these gods, but you can't explain why you don't think, like, you think they're OP. In what way is Vulcan OP? In what world? You're talking about her ult cooldown, his ult cooldown. Most people don't hit a single Vulcan ult in an entire match. Realize that. You could go spectate 100 Vulcan games and they hit no fucking ults in a whole 40-minute match. He 100% can get a rework to the 2 because the turret is stupid. The idea of the turret with old Smite was fine. Current Smite, I think, is stupid. I think it's terrible. The ultimate could be a buff in some way, shape, or form, just making it slightly easier for lower level players to hit. I think Xbalanque probably needs a buff. Give him back his stun on his ultimate, because realistically it never did anything anyway. It just affected low level players. Just give it back. Xing 10 I think is fine. Yamoja I think is fine. Just bad players can't play her. Ymir probably needs a buff. He's only good when hyper aggressive supports are relevant, which is once a year maybe. So that's telling me his kit is bad. They're giving damage to every wall in the game. They might as well make Ymir's 1 do damage. I'm going to be honest with you. Just like if you touch the wall, you take damage or something. Yu Wong I think is fine. Reddit, okay, so I think I put Yu Wong an A+ in the tier list. On the Reddit, the kids were like, yeah, how is Yu Wong A+? I feel like I can't hit any abilities on him. Bro, if you can't hit Yu Wong's abilities, you're just trash. It's not hard to land. It's the most basic thing in the world. You just suck at the god. It makes no sense. They were acting like the god is slow, but it's them. Your brain is slow, Reddit gamer. Your brain can't process how to ult in 2. It's crazy. Zeus, I think you rework Zeus. I'm gonna move him down here because we're getting to the end of this list. I think you rework Zeus's too, or you could buff it and make it so he can move to it in some way. But Zeus is just not good enough unless you're playing in a meta where diving isn't the meta, which just is not, like, for us. Diving has been a thing since the dive, like any dive god got put in the game. I think you rework Zeus's too, or just a bunch of the kit, or the ultimate. Like, you could hit any ability but the 3, I think, or we buff Zeus back to where he was and we give him the 3 stun. For that start out, you give him the 3 stun back. I don't think that would make him meta. I don't think that would make him OP, but that would be a start to a buff, and then they probably tweak the ult again. I'd be down to give Zeus his 3 stun back. Most of you didn't even play the game when he had his stun, so at least you get to experience it one way or another. And then Zhong Kui, I think Zhong Kui sucks. Everyone says Zhong Kui's great. I think Zhong Kui actually needs a buff because it is more mage item based, because when mage items are good, Zhong Kui can one shot with a 1-3 combo with a damage build. But everyone's like, Zhong Kui tanky, he's good in this meta. No, he literally does nothing in this meta. He's kind of poop. So I'd be down for a buff or just make him more mage-esque and less tank-esque with the buff. And then we play around items being good or bad in the game. The shield Zeus is 2 having a stun, that would be weird. That would probably be good because it'd be hard to land. But if you made it relevant, that'd be pretty good. It's funny because they're never gonna rework anything. They used to do they started doing reworks kind of regularly, but I think they're struggling to keep up right now. I think they're struggling to produce gods at the rate they want to, which is a slowed down rate than it used to be. Much slower rate than it used to be. Thoughts on Nua going to old Nua? No, 0% chance. I never, ever, ever want to play against old Nua ever again. I would ban Nua, that old Nua forever if they change it back. I would literally never play against it ever. Am I sure I want to buff Ardio? I don't want to, but she needs a buff. She's been bad for a long time. Like, these are gods that are not performing as well as everyone else.